Well, it happened this week. Microsoft announced the new Xbox One to less than an enthusiastic reception from many in the gaming press and from a lot of fans who were, I think, upset by the fact that Microsoft focused more on the device as almost a media convergence device rather than a dedicated gaming console, and that that was a strategic decision. I think it's too early to condemn it uniformly, but Microsoft has a lot to do at E3 as far as announcing some games for the device. They did claim that there are 15 titles coming out at launch, I believe 8 of which will be new IPs, which is very exciting. But the device as it stands right now, I think has some issues that the gaming community is currently trying to come to terms with. The first is the Xbox's capability to be kind of a set-top box for cable TV. They basically showed the device's ability to bring in a cable feed and use some Kinect gestures to control the TV. I believe it has a built-in channel guide, and they sort of showed the ability to kind of pinch the TV feed to one part of the screen and perhaps make a Skype call and watch a show or a movie with some friends. I think this fell flat partly because the hardcore gaming generation now is not as tied to television content as perhaps they might have been 10 or 15 years ago. A lot of the reactions seem to be, well, I don't have cable anyway, so this is not interesting, and I certainly fall into that category. It was less exciting than the rumors that were out a couple weeks ago where they said, well, Microsoft was going to somehow be the first distributor of cable TV on a national basis, that somehow that they would come up with a subsidy program where if you signed up for cable service through the Xbox One, you'd get the device at a reduced cost. That didn't happen. Basically, it is kind of like a super advanced TiVo. The other big announcement was the new Kinect. Kinect 2 on the Xbox One. Sounds kind of odd to say it that way. Supposedly, it will be far more effective at reading the space in front of it, has a better camera, an updated microphone array. And it seemed like it could do some interesting things as far as recognizing articulation, and they even showed in some of the coverage that I saw its ability to basically read your heart rate, which I think is a bit scary, perhaps. I don't know exactly how that would be utilized in game, but it's interesting. It had kind of a night vision effect. The problem with the Kinect that I saw is that it is always on, or at least that's the impression that we got, that it was so integral to the function of the Xbox One that you would not be able to turn it off, and it would always be listening. So I believe the first speaker got up there, said Xbox on, and it turned on. That's how supposedly it's going to be used in the home. I have a problem with this. I think this is bordering on an invasion of privacy. It's nice to have the functionality, but you're essentially having an always-on console that, in the presence of a strong internet connection, is likely always online, or capable of always being online. So you have a camera and a microphone array in a fairly central location in your house, and something about that I find is disturbing. I think it would be great to turn on the Xbox One, turn on all of the Kinect features if you want to use them in game, and then turn it off when you turn the console off. Or if you like, you can leave it on all the time. I think players basically need choice in the matter. And to be fair, I think Microsoft may not be alone here. We don't know exactly how the new PlayStation Eye will function on the PS4. I think the really interesting and exciting thing about the device, however, is this kind of tripartite operating system arrangement. They're going to have an Xbox OS, a Windows kernel, and then some kind of operating system that communicates between the two. I think that's perhaps the most unique aspect of the system that they announced on Tuesday. As far as the used game debate that had been going on online over the past couple of months, well, it seems like used games will be allowed to a degree, but they're going to be tied to your account, and if another user tries to use that disc, they're going to have to pay a fee, which, from what I read, was the fee of a new game. So I'm not really sure exactly. I mean, to me that is basically restricting used games as we know it. Now, I did read that they may be considering some sort of an exchange where you could sort of put your CD code or your license for the game up for sale through Xbox Live. Again, to me that's different than being able to take my used game and sell it, or buy a used game from someone else. I think this is, again, a kind of disturbing approach to treating your core audience. I'm really not convinced that this is the direction the industry should be taking. As far as the always online aspect of the console, it is not, and they've confirmed this, always online, but it needs to be able to connect online once every 24 hours, and no comment has been made about the functionality of the system if that's not possible. Say during a power outage, or your internet is just down for a couple days. It will have a DVR functionality, which I think is a positive for this new generation of consoles. It seems like both the PS4 and the Xbox One are not so much focusing on delivering an incredibly different or advanced graphical experience, but rather building some interesting social networking around the games. And I think if you had people who could kind of do live streaming, and if you could sort of do some game capture right on the console, pull it off and share it, I think that's a pretty interesting and welcomed development. What also came out of the event on Tuesday was the inevitable comparison to the PlayStation 4. And if you go onto the AnandTech website, they actually have a pretty good chart detailing a detailed comparison between the two consoles based on what we know now. I think the positive that we see when you look at that is the hardware is pretty much standardized. You're not going to have two vastly different architectures like we had with the Xbox 360 and the PlayStation 3. Both systems will have 8-core CPUs running at an estimated 1.6 gigahertz. They are both on the AMD Jaguar platform. What was interesting about this particular article was that they looked at the GPU cores and GPU performance, and PlayStation 4 has more capability, about a 33% increased capability at the level of the GPU, which as Anand points out in his article, will basically mean that developers will just have more to work with on the PS4. And I think that speaks to the fact that Microsoft is taking a different approach with the Xbox, more of a media convergence approach than simply a hardcore gaming approach, at least at this moment. The Xbox One and the PS4 will have 8 gigabytes of RAM. Xbox One is going to be using the cheaper DDR3. The PlayStation 4 will have 8 gigabytes of GDR5. Although I have read that the Xbox One will utilize another graphics chip, memory units, ESRAM. I'll have 32 megabytes of that, and we're not sure how that's going to play out yet, but supposedly that might kind of make up for the speed difference. But in a way, I feel kind of sad. I think that at the back of Microsoft's mind, if you will, they're starting to realize that, you know, perhaps this market is going to change, and I think they designed this console to embrace that change should it happen, if we ever do move away from dedicated hardcore gaming consoles with a focus on AAA titles to a kind of more social media oriented device with some gaming capability. I mean, I don't want to see the Xbox One ultimately become kind of a iOS type device where you have some more graphically rich games, but then you also have a lot of, you know, cheaper titles, and, you know, you can watch the latest TV shows and movies. I mean, that's great to a degree, but I think it is not really what, at least I understand and I want a console to be. So, you know, after Tuesday, I think we just wait until E3. We see what these 8 new intellectual properties are, and we see what Sony's announcement is. I mean, Sony, I think, came out of Tuesday looking really good, but that's because they haven't tipped their hand, and they might have some equally troubling approaches to use games, to always-on functionality. So we'll see what happens, but I think one thing is for sure, this is going to be an extremely interesting E3, and it is essentially a pretty unique start to the next console generation, and I, for one, am really excited to see how this all plays out.